Welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I'm your host, Jeannie Hall, and I'm a creative inspiration coach who helps writers reignite their creative sparks. This podcast is here to help you knock down any barriers that stand between you and your dreams. You can do it. Join me. Hello, and welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. This is Jeannie Hall, your host, and this is episode 51, Ready or Not. So maybe you've played hide and go seek as a kid. I know I did. And I remember that we always covered our eyes and we always counted, whether it was to 10 or 50 or even 100. And then we would call out, ready or not, here I come. It's kind of the way actually that life sometimes happens to us, where we think that we don't have any control and that life just comes at us as it wants. And the truth of the matter is, though, that we create our lives as we go, and being ready for it is a choice that we can make. But that said, sometimes things come at us before we're ready for them. And when we're young, it might just be like a test that we didn't study for, or an idea like algebra, for example, that maybe our minds find difficult to grasp. As we get older, though, these feelings of not being ready can turn into limiting beliefs about what we're capable of. We'll believe that things are too risky or too scary or not worth it. Or we might believe those limiting beliefs about ourselves, that we are not smart enough, not good enough, not worthy of such things. And having this kind of belief in the background of our minds tends to really trip us up. When we have a dream that we want to pursue, but we don't, most of the time it's because we say we're not ready. But what that really means is that we have a limiting belief that keeps us from going forward. So maybe you might say to yourself, oh, I could try to write a book, but my grammar isn't perfect. Or I could try to write a book, but what if no one likes it? Or I could try to get that promotion at work, but I know my boss doesn't have any confidence in me. Or I could go into business for myself, and I want to be in control of my creative and financial future. I really do. But not having a check directly deposited every week, it feels too risky not to have that. So is there something in your life you want, but you don't feel ready for it? Because if there is, don't worry, you're not alone. That whole I'm not ready feeling comes to anyone and everyone who ventures out of their comfort zones for the first time. It also happens on the 50th time. So it doesn't matter how often you decide to strike out and try something new. You're always going to have that feeling that, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. That's why the most successful among us cultivates their ability to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because growth is uncomfortable and scary. But the rewards of staying in that temporary discomfort, and yes, your discomfort will be temporary, are vast. If you are willing to face that frightened feeling and go through with your plan anyway, you'll be amazed at what you can learn and what you can accomplish. Public speakers become entertaining and informative and fascinating to listen to because they do a lot of it. The best speakers out there, the ones that always attract those huge crowds and fill theaters, and everybody watch their TED Talks, or maybe they're comedians or whatever. The reason that certain ones rise to the top is because they do it all the time, and they practice and they practice and they hone their speaking skills by speaking in public frequently. Gold medalists gain their gold medals by practicing day in and day out, by preparing for those championship meets or those Olympics, by doing their routines, perfecting them, doing them over and over, adjusting things that need to be adjusted, and working them out until it's the very best it can possibly be. Successful writers write on a consistent basis, despite whatever obstacles come their way. And they do this in order to hone their craft. Now, what all these things might look like to an individual like you is going to be different, because maybe if you're a writer, consistency is only going to be a few sentences every day, or maybe it'll be weekly. You make sure that you meet a certain goal. Or maybe you're so prolific that you can write a whole ebook in a day, or you can write 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 words a day, and that's what you keep to. That is how you hone your craft. Maybe you write novels and that's what you do. Or maybe you blog. Maybe you're a blogger. If you're a blogger, as long as you're putting out those blogs, you're staying consistent. The reason all of these people become successful in whatever field they're in is because they step out of the safe, warm places they've been and into the vast and uncertain unknown. Their willingness to do this opens them up to the unlimited potential all of us have within. So being as prepared as possible for the big changes that come into your life as you follow your dreams is very helpful. But you may never feel completely ready. Still, preparation can make all the difference. If you know you've made inroads into learning what you need to before you take any giant steps, you'll have more confidence then to go about it. If you went and became a teacher and you tried to teach without any training whatsoever, are you going to be a good teacher on your first day? Probably not, right? If you don't know your subject matter, how are you going to teach it? If you don't know how to stand up in front of a classroom and talk to kids or adults, how are you going to be a teacher? If you don't know how to write on the board, how are you going to be a good teacher, right? You have to have all of those components to make it work. So there are things that you can do. There are actions you can take that will make you feel more confident and more ready. And I personally believe the universe will show you what you need to do if you're open to noticing those signs. So like if you're undertaking a big change in your life, whatever it might be, maybe you've gone through a relationship breakup, whether it was a long-term relationship that you just moved out or broke up with the person, or maybe it was a divorce where you're splitting a household or something huge like that. And that takes a lot to get used to. It's a whole different ball of wax to go on with life after something like that. That's a very big event in your life. Not to say that it can't be good for you in the long run, because I think it will be if that's what you want and that's what you need. But that also means it's a difficult time while you're there. But you can prepare yourself as best as you can to live a totally different way. What is it that you need to learn? Some people get married very young and then spend 20 years with someone and they've never balanced their checkbook, for example, or they've never been the one to pay the bills, or maybe they've never even worked outside of the home. Could be any number of things that they don't know how to do. Maybe they don't know how to cook, depending on whatever it is that you're used to in your relationship. It always is going to behoove you, though, to learn how to do those things, because when you're on your own, you will need to know how to do them. And the thing is, as scary as that might be, you'll feel a lot more accomplished once you do accomplish them, once you do it yourself for the first time and succeed. Then you'll feel better. Then you'll know, you know what? I can do this. I'm totally okay. Maybe it's a positive change, like a marriage, or moving in with someone, or any number of positive things that can happen. A new job that you really, really wanted, and now you got it. Go girl or go guy, right? That's great. Congratulations are in order. But sometimes those positive things have things that you didn't expect either, and you have to learn something new. And you're definitely going to have to learn something new for a new job. You're also going to have to learn how to do new things if it's a new marriage or a new living situation where you have to learn how to communicate with your partner on a whole nother level. That is part of the journey. And again, the universe will show you the ways you need to go if you're just willing to look for the signs, those little signposts along the way that show you you're on your right path. So maybe you'll see a new option or a new opportunity that you may not have even thought of before, or maybe you saw it before but you never thought it would apply to you. If acting on that option or that opportunity feels good to you, then you may want to go for it. That is what I do personally. If it feels like something that feels good to me, then I will go for it. And if it doesn't, I won't. So like, for example, there are things that have changed in my life. Like I used to think that what I wanted to do was write romantic suspense thrillers for the rest of my life and be a published writer and published author, and that is what I would do for a living for the rest of my life. That was my dream. And the thing is, along the way, after I first got published, things started happening and it was all exciting, and getting that first contract and working with a real publisher and editor and all those things is super exciting and super fun. It's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. But what I discovered after a few years was that that kind of didn't feel like my path anymore. When I started learning about spirituality and personal development, I found that I wasn't as keen to write fiction as I was to explore the personal development and nonfiction side of things. And so now that is where my focus has been drawn. And I have no doubt that I may go back to fiction at some point in the future. But being on a completely different path has kind of led me to not be in the same Facebook groups, for example, that I was in with all the authors and book promotion and book reviewers and all that kind of stuff. I kind of let a lot of that go. I let go of some memberships and some organizations that I used to be a part of because it just doesn't feel like it applies to me anymore. I used to do all these contests, enter all these contests as a writer, and that's how I got my start, and it was great. But when this big contest that I'd been waiting for came along at the beginning of, or at the end of actually, of last year, I remember thinking, that it's finally here. I can go ahead and enter now that I've been published. I can enter this one contest. But when I went to go online and fill out the application and submit my novel, I felt like, I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel, and it wasn't fear and it wasn't doubt that I couldn't win or anything like that, or that I wouldn't have a shot. It was just this feeling of, no, this isn't right for me. And I went in another direction. And there is a difference between just having self-doubt and self-worth issues and not feeling confident about your own abilities and running the other way because of that. That's a totally different thing. What I experienced, though, was just that wasn't the right path for me anymore, that I didn't need to submit my work to this contest, that I'd already proven myself, and that my path lay in a very different direction but one that was just as worthwhile, if not even more so, if not even more meaningful and more fulfilling. And I have just continued to follow those little signposts, those little signs along the way saying, okay, this feels good. Oh, okay, this feels good. Oh, the same thing happened when I came into coaching and discovered what a life coach really does and how much they can really help people, how much I can help people as a creative inspiration coach and help authors and help people with their creativity and to feel inspired. That is so, so fulfilling to me. That feels much better to me than the other route as being an author of fiction. And again, I'm not saying that I'll never go back on that journey and complete it, but at this particular moment in my life, I'm going in a direction I never imagined I would go. And it feels really good to just trust God and the universe to show me the way. So if you're in that boat too, don't be afraid to trust that even though you've had a dream that may be getting fulfilled, if it starts to feel wrong or like you want to go another direction, that's totally okay. Keep following the inspiration that you're given because there's a reason that you're being given that inspiration. Another way that you can help yourself feel more ready to follow whatever path you're going to take is to invest in yourself. Because the more you invest in yourself, whether it's reading books that are going to inform you about some topic, whether it's education like getting a degree or taking a special class or getting a certification, whatever it is, those things can also give you confidence and help you to feel more ready to pursue your goal and your dream. And I do have a link in the show notes. This is a great post on a website called the Personal Growth Channel, and it's all about the power of investing in yourself. It features Warren Buffett, who is very famous for writing lots of self-help and success type of books. So check that out. And also, I also linked to my mentor, Kelly Cooper's website and her podcast. And she has this great podcast out there. It's just a few minutes long about embracing confusion and uncertainty. So if you are feeling confused and uncertain, check out Kelly's podcast. I've also linked that in the description. So to wrap up this podcast, what I'd like to do is to share some quotes, some famous quotes about being ready. And some of these quotes are quite ancient, literally, and some are pretty recent. But I would love to hear what you think of these quotes. So here's one from Ovid, the ancient philosopher, an ancient poet and writer. If you are not ready today, you will be even less so tomorrow. And to me, I take that quote to mean do it now, right? Don't let your fears sneak up on you and make you doubt yourself. If you have prepared and you've done everything in your power to make sure that you're ready and you're just hesitating and procrastinating because you're fearful of taking that final step, push yourself a little and take it. My second quote is actually a proverb, and it says, "When the student is ready, the master appears." You may have heard of this one. It's actually quite famous. I've seen it quoted in a lot of places, Pinterest and all sorts of places, all over social media. And I think what this one is all about, when you're ready to make a change, all the resources that you need to make that change will come into your life and become available to you. Because sometimes we believe the lie that there are limits and there's scarcity and there's not enough resources and there's not enough money and there's not enough this and not enough that. And especially in today's world with the internet and with the way we can get to information so easily, so quickly, there's really no limit to how quickly and how easily you can get to whatever information you might need, whatever educational resources. You can crowdfund for money if you need to. There's a million different ways that never even existed before in our history that are available to us now. So let that kind of bolster you and pick you up if you're feeling doubtful and you're feeling scared. There is always a way to pursue your dream. You just need to look for it. And the next quote is it was just a Pinterest from Funny Life Quotes is the website. It says, if something isn't happening for you, it doesn't mean it'll never happen. It means you're not ready for it. Which I find very interesting, because as a coach, I have come into a few different situations where I was drawn to something, and then whenever I got more deeply into it, it scared me and I felt kind of overwhelmed by it. So like, to be self-employed and to be an entrepreneur means you're going to have to market yourself. And so I kind of got into studying marketing by famous podcasters and YouTubers, and there's all sorts of information out there on that. But when I actually got into it, I felt really intimidated because that's really not my forte. And so if that's you, maybe it just means you need to keep studying whatever passion you're pursuing a little bit more before you go into the other side. So if it's a twofold thing, like a business where you need to learn the business part of it, you're either going to have to hire someone to do that for you, or you're going to have to do it yourself. And if that intimidates you, maybe keep studying whatever the subject matter is that you're trying to do, or get your educational part done first so you actually feel like you know what to do in that new position, right? And then come back to the other side, the business side. Or maybe you're just the opposite. Maybe you're a business person and that's the part you know, and that's the part you feel good about. And it's the subject matter that's new. Whatever it is that may intimidate you and may push you to feel scared and bring up all your doubt and that kind of thing. It's okay to feel that way, first of all. Just don't let that stop you, though. It's going to be okay. You may just need to take it in little tiny baby steps so that it won't overwhelm you and won't freak you out. So that's okay. Another quote, and this one is actually by Marissa Mayer, who is the CEO of Yahoo. And she said, I always did something I was a little not ready to do. I think that's how you grow. When there's that moment of, wow, I'm not really sure I can do this, and you push through those moments, that's when you have a breakthrough. And I believe that with my whole heart, because there's so much of us that tells us, no, stop. You can't do that. No, you're not ready to do that. No, you're not ready. Stop. Right? Sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and plunge, right? Sometimes you have to leap, because sometimes you already have all the resources in place. Sometimes you already know what you need to know. You're just scared. And if you can push through that fear and push past it, that is how you will make that breakthrough into the success that you've been after all along. And then one last quote. This is by Hugh Laurie. It's a terrible thing, I think, in life to wait till you're ready. I have this feeling that actually no one is ever ready to do anything. There is almost no such thing as ready. There is only now. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. Just go to writinginyourjammies.com, and there'll be a little box that you can put your email in, and I'll be happy to send you some little happy inspirational emails. I send them out twice a week. And I hope you have a beautiful day, week, month, and year. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I appreciate every download and every person who has subscribed. I release new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday, so if you enjoy this content, please consider leaving a review. The more reviews fledgling shows like mine receive, the more visible it becomes on the various podcast stations. Each review helps, so if you enjoy what I've been sharing, please help others find this show by leaving a brief review. Thanks again for listening.